Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Continuing with our open house today. My name is Keith. I am the product development lead in TOA Canada. I'll be talking for the next hour or so about our VX3000, which is our main distributed amplifier and PA system. We just released it a couple months ago. Should be available, and we already have some items in stock. Uh, we'll discuss the general overview of the system, starting with where is it applicable, the projects that you might consider for it, overview of the hardware of the system, as well as the general functionalities available to it. You'll see as we finish that there's a significant feature set available for the VX3000 that could add significant value to projects that you might encounter. So let's start with it. So what is the VX3000? So the VX3000 is, again, I mentioned, a distributed amplifier mixer for intended for PA. It's IP based, so it works on the network. Uh, by redundancy, you can also stack it multiple units to handle, uh, depending on the size of your system, your needs. Uh, Ranging from one frame to multiple frames, however you need it to be. Uh, it specializes in large zone counts. Say, for example, I worked for a project that had 14 floors in Alberta. It was a hospital. 14 floors, a total of 28 zones, and a total of about 16 or 18 amplifiers. That would have been a the VX3000 would have been a better solution for that at the time, given the size and scope, because the zones themselves, they're like a total of only 50 watts each, very small individual zones, but large number of zones that need to be targeted. And page two. The VX3000 is very scalable, so you can start with one frame up to how many frames you need. And it's also very flexible because there's multiple types of frames that would tailor best, would work best for, if say you only need it for background music, if you only need it for uh, just for pure PA announcement, then there's a frame that's tailored for that. And if there's an application that really needs a big wattage for one output zone, you can tailor it as much as you want. It's very flexible. So let me close that one. So the VX3000 is composed of four components. There is the frames themselves. So those are the main chassis where everything gets held. Those are the the head end equipment. You have the microphones, which is your input and your main input and paging devices. Also, you have the modules, the individual amplifier modules that you can select according to the need of your project. So long gone are the days when you need to buy a specific 4-channel amp, but you only need 3 channels for that particular project. For this, you can tailor how many modules you need for that specific application. And also, the the last part of it is there's accessory components to it, so you can expand the number of contact closures you can send to it. You can expand the number of contact outputs that you can utilize, and also a bunch of control uh, options uh, for the system. So let's start with the discussion on the frames themselves. So the frames is the backbone of the VX3000. It's the main chassis that holds the the amplifier modules or line output modules, should you want to use that for the VX3000. There, for that, you can, for each frame, think of it, if everyone here is familiar with the M9000 that we sell, think of it like that in terms of modularity. So the modules, think of it, instead of having the line out modules, you have the amplifier modules instead. So you can slide in and install modules as needed. The frames themselves have built-in balanced line level audio, dry contact input, and the microphone connections, as well as uh, connection to the battery and power system that I will discuss a bit later. It has outputs for speaker level and also the contact outputs. There's, if you need the contact output has both regular transistor outputs, regular gate sync transistor outputs for just your regular contact closures, or if you need a relay, which is much robust, uh, if you need something much more robust, then that option is available as well. So the VX3004, that is our main 4-channel frame. It can handle up to 4 independent channels, and each module handles an independent channel. Uh, as it's very similar to the D8250FH, which is the 4-channel frame, and then tie it to, say, if you have the M8080 DSP, and now you have a 4-channel mixer amplifier in one package. The second option is the VX3008, which is an 8-channel zone. Uh, it's more intended for, say, you have a larger number of zones and you only have one background music input. It works best for that application. Very similar in function to the 4-channel frame, but this one allows you to expand the number of zones so you can handle more zone counts without really sacrificing, say, you'll need now two amplifiers. Say if you have a 8 channels, 8 zone counts that you need to target, and say your load for each zone is about, let's say, 20 watts. You don't need to buy two 4-channel amplifiers for each to handle each zone separately. With this, you can have that with just one amplifier system. The same concept extends to the VX3016, but that is more, as you will see later, I will show you the diagram. That's more intended for background, no background music. It's more for just direct paging, because that's for most applications that really need paging. Uh, they don't really need background music for those large number of zone counts. So the modules, as I mentioned, there's the amplifier module, and there's also a line level module. So should you want to just send an align output module to, say, if you have already existing amplifiers that you want to reuse, this can, you can just swap it and use a line output module instead, and the VX3000 now becomes just a regular DSP without the amplifiers. The amplifier modules range from 150 watts, 250, and 500 watts. So depending on your zones, your load on each zone, you can tailor it as much as possible. So you don't need to spec a 250 watt amplifier channel for, say, a zone that only needs 60. So you can optimize in that regard. So the point is you only use what you need and no unused channels. The amplifier or the VX3000 can handle a multiple number of microphones, paging microphones. If you're familiar with the VM3000, pretty much all those microphones carry over with additional uh, microphones, newer microphones that we're releasing. Uh, each chassis can handle up to, I believe, 16 microphones daisy chained or fanned out, depending on the mode or the type that you're using. There's also the newer RM500, which is a more sleeker, more modern design for paging. Actually, it's very familiar. Very, if you're familiar with the IP-A1 paging microphone, which is over there, that's the form factor of it, but more for the VX3000. So you're not tied with just one limited number of microphones with your microphone inputs. You can expand a large number of microphones for, say, you have a hospital. There's 24 floors. Each floor has a independent nurse station. Each nurse station can have their independent uh, paging microphone tailored and programmed for that specific floor, all centralized in one head end. The accessories and power supply. So of course everything needs power. So the VX3000 is powered by external power distributor. We a power supply. We recommend the manual RCP 1000, which is a 24 volt 1000 watt power supply. Uh, and it's distributed using our proprietary VX2000DS. So has anyone here been had worked with the SX2000 before? No. Anyways, so that power supply was originally for the for the SX2000, but it was repurposed for the VX3000. So it provides power monitoring, battery backup. It allows for uh, automatic power failover. So when the power fails, it switches over to the battery, and also built into it, because it's able to connect to the VX3000 system as well. You can program in the system to send an email to any target emails in case of a failure. So there's live monitoring on the power, live monitoring on the speaker lines, live monitoring in case there's a short on the line. You can also program the system to detect that, or any failure of the system. Um, the accessories, the VX3000 PM expands. So say you have a system already, you just need additional audio inputs and audio and control outputs for that. You don't need the whole frame. So you can add another VX3000 PM, which expands the audio inputs and expands the audio outputs as well as the control inputs as well. So it just allows you to tailor the system to your needs. The VX3000 CT, which is a contact accessory, allows you to add contact buttons on the system and you can program that on the software however you want those contacts to trigger. So say you want to trigger an event if you press a certain button, then that also triggers a cascade of depending on how it's programmed. So the VX3000, by the way, runs on a 24 volt system. So and each amplifier module and frame needs an independent 24 volt power supply, and that's again coming from the VX2000DS. The VX2000DS is has power. There's breakers inside it, so in case there's a surge, it's protected, and in case one amplifier module shorts out, the rest are not affected. Only that module is isolated, and the problem is also localized to that particular module. And again, if you program it for failure monitoring, you can then flag that and then send the um, the notification to whoever the text is at on-site or your system manager. So let's go in depth on the component level. So you'll see, at least because for me, when I need to look at the hardware inputs and outputs to at least get a grasp on what what the capabilities are. So this is a general layout of the frames of the VX3000. The system status on the top right hand side indicates the status of the device. If there's power, it will power on. If it's running, that LED will light as well. If it switches into emergency mode, then the LED will light up. And then finally, the CPU, because the VX3000 frame has a built-in CPU. If in the off chance that there's a CPU failure, uh, the VX3000 is designed to run on an analog system. There's a failover. So when the CPU turns off, technically that does not cut off the full functionality of the system. Core functionalities are maintained, but this LED will light on to indicate that your frame potentially has an issue, uh, might need some servicing to be done. Regular LAN indicators, because the VX3000 has two LAN ports, A and B for redundancy, and also indicators for the lines of uh, the uh, the microphones. So as you saw, Louis raised a question there on what CPU functions are, or what functions are turned off when the CPU fails. I don't have that on the top of my head. I have to look into the documentations, but I'll get back to pretty much the manual for the VX3000 is exhaustive for the functionalities that are failed over. There's minutiae, but overall the audio is maintained as much as possible. So there's fault indicators on the front of the frame. So if you look into the rack on the head end, you can automatically see what is say there's a failure on the device on the frame. It shows you what type of failure. Is it a general failure? Is more of like we can't really diagnose it. It's system wide. That's a general failure of sorts. Unit failure is more for the frame itself has an issue, either a power failure or a component issue. If there's a network problem, it will indicate that as well. And finally, if there's the emergency mic, because it's a critical component, if there's an emergency mic that's connected to your system and that mic fails, it also lights up that LED over there. And when that failure occurs, by the way, this will blink and it will make a noise. So the system manager is aware that this failure is present. There's also line status indicators on the front of the panel. So you can see which line, say there's a speaker that gets busted, shorts out, the impedance goes to God knows where, and causes a system failure, causes a short on the amplifier. That indicates on this as well for each individual channel that you connected to. Um, I the VX3000 you can actually pre-pro to so say you install a new system. It has the capability to read the impedance of each individual line that you connect to it, speaker line, and then keep track of that as a reference. So in the future, in case there's a system failure or something goes wrong in your line that causes that impedance reading to go out of range, it will throw that flag as well. Finally, this is the amplifier indicators. It just indicates the status of the amplifiers, whether it's running, there's a signal going to it, your regular amplifier indicators, really. Now, if you take off the front cover of the panel, you will see there's a lot of things to see, like LEDs, but For the most part, I told you earlier that you can connect individual amplifiers. These are the connectors to that. When you slot in the amplifiers, you connect the power, and you connect a serial, or no, a parallel uh, connector to it, so that it can communicate with the frame itself. For out of the box, the VX3000, there's two ways to configure the IP address of it. One is you can configure the IP address via dip switch. There's a setting on the dip switch to depending on the settings, binary settings of it, you can configure a specific IP address. Or if you're more comfortable with setting everything via software, there's a master dip switch there that if you turn that on, the dip switch settings over here on the frame no longer matters. Whatever is programmed on the configuration software is what carries over. So in case where you really forgot your IP address, you can revert to this, and then let it. You can connect to it as well as so you know your IP address. So I mentioned the impedance measurement system that I earlier. So that button over there, when you initialize the system, it will read the impedance of the individual lines and then keep track of it. You can actually export it to a PDF, or no, to an Excel spreadsheet, and extract it via the configuration software. And then once the system is running, it will monitor that range and compare every the live monitoring of the impedance of that line, the lines that you have on the VX3000. So a critical part of the VX3000 is the unit ID. So each individual frame has to have a unique ID. Otherwise, it will not be detected by the configuration software and detected by other frames as well. So these knobs over here are your settings for that ID. So depending on the settings on those A and B knobs, you can select from, it's actually hexadecimal, from 1 to 16. And then you have 01, 02, 03, 04, so on and so forth. Uh, by default, the system comes as 00. So before you install anything, you'll have to configure that so that each individual frame has that unique ID. Very small detail, but you'll be surprised a lot of integrators forget that basic step. And then your classic reset button resets the frame and power cycles it. And then on the front as well, you have the option to adjust the input gain of your four line balance uh, line or mic inputs on the back of the frame. So if you look on the back, I mentioned before, we have four audio inputs, so it's pretty straightforward. Balanced, so earth, cold and hot. As much as possible, use balanced inputs. You'll be surprised the number of ground hums that we encounter, people not using uh, balanced inputs. RS links, those are the connectors for your microphones, for your RM microphones, RM300 and RM500. And each port can handle up to 16 units daisy chain to it. Uh, the microphones, the first microphone connected to it can be powered over that port, so it doesn't need an external power supply. The next consecutive ones will need an additional power supplies. Analog link, these ones. So I told you that you can link the VX3000 over the network, but this analog link allows you to link the VX3000 over an analog connection so that you have a degree of redundancy. In case your network fails, there's still connectivity on the analog side for your system. DS Link is the power supply monitoring. So you connect that port to your VX2000 DS that monitors your power status, the power, the voltage of your system. You can set up flags, and that is used to detect any power failures on the system. Emergency control in. This is a set of contact inputs. It's actually, it's curious. It uses RJ45, but it's actually each pair is a contact pair that you can use to trigger control inputs for it. And then these control outs is used to send control output signals to flag certain statuses. Say you have a third party device or third party monitoring system that you want to send an indicator on your current VX3000 system. You can do that with this one as well. Control outs, this is the dry contacts, and you can also send a set of this the first couple of set of pairs of dry contacts indicate is specifically assigned for the CPU status, general fault, the LEDs that you see on the front. The rest, the next consecutive ones are open collector control outputs that you can program in the system, as well as the VX3000 is also capable of receiving dry contact inputs. So any contact inputs that you'll need to send to this to, say, trigger a paging announcement, trigger an event, you can do that as well. And then, of course, we have two redundant LAN ports just in case one set uh, conks out. So I won't go through the minutia of in the individual frames because they they have the same flavor of it. It's just the numbers that differ, and also connectivity of each one as well. So over here, one has 8 relay outputs, the other has 16 relay outputs, so on and so forth. So what's the difference between the frames? So I this graphic over here really shows the difference between each one. So the VX3004 has four individual amplifiers feeding individual zones, so you can feed independent BGM sources to it, uh, different from each other, and then you can page to the individual zones using the microphone. The VX3008 works more on a speaker switch, where one amplifier gets fed from the BGM source, and the other amplifier is responsible for the paging source. And then, depending on the trigger on the system and the configuration, it will switch for each individual zone whenever you want to target it as a paging target. And then finally, the VX3016 is purely a speaker selector. That's why I said it's not ideal for having background music, but more for just paging uh, smaller zones. That's where it shines the best. So let's go over the quick functions and features. So very similar. Everyone here familiar with Dante? So I'd say there's there's a lot of similarities between the functionalities between the VX3000 and Dante, but the approach is a bit different. Uh, it works by setting targets, and then you can create programs, initiate those programs to target certain zones, and there's a set of triggers that occur. You can either start a program to trigger via a time. So, say for example, you have a shopping mall that only opens a certain time of the day. You can program the VX3000 to trigger the background music only to trigger that time of the day from this particular source. That's one way to do it. What I call an automatic time trigger. Another way to trigger it is via the contact inputs to the VX3000. Uh, you can also trigger an event via the paging microphones. So the paging microphones, you can press a button, you can play a bell ring. Don, can you actually press um, the VX3000 over there? There's a button on that. That's, by the way, this is our VX3000 demo. If you want to play with it later, there's a bell ring on that. So for that, I used a pre-recorded my MP3 of a bell ring. You created a program of that where it rings twice, and then there's a pause in between, and then trigger that program to the to target the to the to all the zones. Um, of course, there's an event where there's a BGM playing and you want to make an announcement. You have the flexibility to do a mixing option where one the BGM gets ducked lower or totally cut off. There's also the option where there's a slow fade in and slow fade out, or automatic cutoff switch and then automatic switch over once that BGM or that paging is finished. Um, so there's the VX3000 differs from Dante in the sense that there's a bit of latency uh, built into the VX3000. Not that much. I believe it's like 16 millisecond latency, but it's not designed for like pure orchestra live events applications. It's more intended for broadcast PA systems. Also, the codec of it is a bit lower than uh, Dante. I think Dante is running at 92 kilohertz per second. I think the VX3000 is about half that, the 42 or 46. Don't remember the top of my head. So, but of course, the quality of the audio is still significant compared to, say, your run-of-the-mill um, paging system, which works on G711, which is very uh, it's elevator music. So you can create general broadcasts. You can create BGM patterns that can be triggered. You can assign broadcast from to target a number of zones. That demo over there is programmed to. Uh, there's three zones there, 1, 2, and 3. So left to right, each speaker has an independent zone. I programmed that to have uh, 1, 2, 3 is independent. Each independent independent speaker, and then 4, 5, and 6 are a mixture of it. So you can program it to your heart's content and take any audio input and then send it out uh, to the zone. Uh, so in the case of triggers, we've discussed the microphone trigger where you can trigger it via the microphone, trigger it by a contact input to the VX3000, trigger it via an automatic time setting. There's also the regular signal level trigger where if you have an audio input, you can program the device so that when the audio input goes hot, it automatically plays to the zone that you pre-program it to target. So really flexible. This is another one that I think most of a lot of integrators like. You can have, you don't need an external audio recorder or a playback device for the VX3000. There's already one built in. You can load uh, I don't remember the top of my head the maximum capacity of it, but you can load uh, audio files to it and then create programs of that of a set of audio files however you want. You can control the playback, the 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 number of playbacks. Does it continue, or is it does it play until you stop it, or does it play for a certain number of times? Uh, yeah, so you can sort of program a bell schedule. So, say if you want to trigger a bell ring at a certain time of the day, you can initiate that one and then program the uh, timing of the system on that as well. We can also program the VX3000 on the response or what triggers it can detect. Pulse level, which is on the edge of the rising edge of the signal, or it follows the level. It only goes hot when the input goes hot. As I mentioned, control outputs, there's the open collector option, and there's also the relay. So you're not tied with one option or the other, and you don't need an external uh, relay, open collector to relay converter to to have a properly isolated system. Emergency functions, there's sequences that you can program to it. You can program a pattern. Uh, it's basically a higher priority version of the main functionalities of the VX3000. Excuse me. But that's only triggered in the case where an emergency is triggered in the system. And if you really just want to use your VX3000 as your regular PA and background music system, you can just do it as well and disable the emergency functions totally. I mentioned the line surveillance function earlier. There's two ways of line surveillance over here. There's the uh, initialization method where I already discussed earlier, and there's an addition. There's a surveillance where you have an external line monitoring device where it automatically triggers a contact when the line level it triggers it detects a short or anything of the sort. A whole set of indicators on the front to assist for troubleshooting. We discussed that earlier. And now let's move on to, say, hypothetical integrations with other TOA devices. So we we are most likely going to deal with integration with, say, SIP systems. Right now, we're working on the background on getting a native SIP integration with the VX3000. That's still in the early stages of the works in product development. I'm still working on that. But one way to integrate it with SIP is you tie it to a SIP gateway with a N8000 system. So you have your N8000 DI to trigger a contact input, and then your N8000 RS to send the audio. And when the SIP gateway receives a call, it will interpolate between the SIP system, receive it on the N8000, and then send it to the VX3000. A much simpler application is if you have SP11N, TOA's uh, SIP module. Since it's just a regular contact output, you can tie the audio coming out from the SP11N to the VX3000 via a balanced to unbalanced converter, and then send the contacts to the VX3000 input, and now you have a SIP-based system. As I mentioned, we're still working on a much more thorough native VX3000 system. Actually, the upcoming CX1000 uh, intercom system from TOA is natively compatible. No other third-party system needed. It natively ties in with the VX3000, and so can page one uh, over the other, just out of the box. And then if you have an IP-A1, you just send the contact input of the IP-A1 and the audio input to the VX3000, and with that you can page a zone as well. So that concludes my presentation. Anyone have feedback, questions, thoughts? Yeah. So back to Louis' question earlier, the CPU, if there's a major CPU failure on the frames, you can only do the all call. So the zone switching is disabled, but the all call is maintained. It's the native function that's maintained when the CPU fails. Anybody else? The paging stations, you can actually natively DC chain them from. I think if you look at the ports, you can DC chain one from the other. It's the I have to look into this, but the the fireman microphone will need a special fan out accessory to do the DC chain. No, no. Yeah. Any questions online? Okay. All right, so that concludes my presentation. If you need anything else, feel free to reach out to tech support, and we'll take care of your inquiries.
Dr. Sound.